Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain and welcome back. Today I wanted to talk about different kinds of evidence because I've mentioned qualitative and quantitative or anecdotal evidence previously, but not everyone knows exactly what those things are. And so I thought I'd go into it because why not? Um, so ultimately, in regards to there are essentially two forms of evidence, especially in science, but also in various other places. And as a result, you've got quantitative, i.e., the numerical counting up of or analysis of the numerical side of things. So, for example, an example of some very simple quantitative evidence would be if someone said there are 3 ducks in the pond, and you could count them and go 1, 2, 3. That observation, or that tagging, or whatever it was that you wanted to do to make sure that you understood that there were 3 ducks in the pond, that would be quantitative evidence because you had actually been able to count them. Yeah, there would be a realism to that whereby you would be able to literally stand there and go 1, 2, 3. Yep, you're right. But then you've got the other kind, which is anecdotal evidence. Yeah, whereby it would be very much more in terms of telling a story or making a statement that is purely off your own observations and doesn't have necessarily any substantial proof to it apart from you saying it. And this is why the rules of evidence within science collect data and kind of collect their results in a very systematic way, with a lot of checking back and forth over things, because it's purely in an attempt to avoid the bias or the biases inherent in anecdotal evidence. Someone saying, "I have created cold fusion, and this is how I did it," and they tell an elaborate story that is hard to replicate, and then another scientist will actually come and look for the evidence. They will look at the numbers and go, those numbers don't add up. You'll go and do a whole load of other bits and pieces, try and replicate the experiment. Replicability is a very important part of the scientific method. If you can find it numerous times in the same way, then that stands to reason that it's probably an accurate thing that has been hypothesized. You've got people like Thunderfoot on YouTube here, for example, who does an awful lot of the science debunking because the kind of replication of some of the experiments or some of the things that people are claiming, when he is able to do them with his resources or with the information that he has as a research scientist, they prove to be untrue. They prove to be inaccurate, or they prove to be in some way flawed suggestions. And so when I was talking about this before, I was talking very much in the way of people justifying their actions or people sticking up with ideologies and things like that. And so in a lot of these cases I go, well, you've got a solid baseline for the universe that can be found through science, which is, as suggested already, fairly easily avoiding of the biases inherent in just anecdotal evidence. And so it's a case of science allows you that baseline, that bedrock. But lots of people ignore the numbers, they ignore the quantitative evidence, they ignore the scientific evidence that's been found through replication or found through numerical analysis or information provided by a machine doing the readings for you. Lots of people ignore those in favor of anecdotal evidence. And you can understand this because, what's easier to understand? What is easier to take on board? Someone stood in front of you going, this is a thing, or having to work out what the numbers and things like that are on a machine to then further extrapolate that information and understanding. It's a tough thing to do. But what it comes down to is, if you look at evidence in law, if you've got genetic proof, if you've got fingerprints and you've got other things like that at the scene of a crime that all indicate one person, then there's a good chance that that person did it. There are all manner of pieces of evidence there that don't seem to be particularly kind of consequential or anything like that. They're not just there out of happenstance. They are out of place. They are obvious pieces of evidence that can be quantified, analysed, worked around, and linked between the crime that has occurred and the person that committed it. However, then you look at the anecdotal evidence as provided in a courtroom, which is essentially kind of eyewitness testimony. And with eyewitness testimony, it has been proven, for example, you have had numerous studies done throughout the 70s and the 80s, but one of the most notable ones that I came across that kind of stood out to me was that in a 1932 book, a Yale law professor called Edwin Borchardt, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, did a study where he looked at several, I think it's 60 odd wrongful convictions, and he found that eyewitness misidentification was one of the leading contributing factors in the wrongful convictions, leading to about 45%, nearly half of all of the wrongful convictions there. And as a result, it's like full well, everyone knows full well that our minds are, fallible, that we misremember things, that we forget stuff, that we fill in the blanks, that you can walk into a room going, I came in here for a reason, but then you just can't remember what it was, and no matter how hard you try, or whether you put your hands up and go, it'll come back to me, and walk away, there's a chance it might not come back to you. It may not have been that important, but there's your brain is easily fallible. Sometimes it has those moments and it blanks out. Sometimes it will change its mind very subtly. It'll change your mind rather very subtly, just to align with what you're thinking or what you're doing at the time. And this is where, when it comes to ideologies, when it comes to decisions being made and things like that, I'm sat very much in a place of, look at the numbers, find the reality, find the solid baseline that we have kind of gained through the scientific method to appreciate the universe. Take all of that on board. Don't let your mind just do its own thing, because it ends up then being focused on emotion, focused on people, focused on your environments and some of the things that you're doing. It doesn't focus on the reality of the big picture and how that all narrows down on you. That's what you need to be doing, to ensure that you have that perspective, that you're making good decisions, that you're able to correctly appraise a situation and an environment, so that you don't end up regretting what you're doing. That's just life, unfortunately, and this is why I will always err on the side of quantitative evidence, stuff that is solid and tangible, than your qualitative or anecdotal evidence, because qualitative or anecdotal evidence is really easy to dismiss. Either it could be someone misremembering, it could be someone calling out the wrong thing, it could be someone who hasn't understood and has taken a slightly different slant on something that you're looking at. Anecdotal evidence doesn't mean a damn thing. The testimonies that people give me, I've got some in paper, or some people have posted them on Facebook and stuff like that. They are potentially easily dismissed, and I am well aware of this, simply because just because it's worked for someone else doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Just because I've been the right coach for those people doesn't mean I'm going to be the right coach for someone else. And I would never suggest that I'm purely the best coach that can help everybody, but I'm trying. That's why I'm doing this. But as a result, what it comes down to is, when someone just tells you a story, as I've said numerous times, stories are important. You can learn a lot from them. But you need to look at them. You need to pick them apart. You can't just get completely swept up in one and let it drag you wherever it wants. Take that story, listen to it, work through it. But what it comes down to is, always keep your feet planted firmly on the ground. on that bedrock, on that fact, on that examinable, tangible set of numbers and results that you can use, that science and other kind of similar institutions have been able to grant you, so that you remain grounded, so that you aren't just dragged away by the river of flowing anecdotes and ideas. Yeah? Stay grounded, pay attention, listen and be curious, but don't always believe. Examine it, break it down, use the different types of evidence and the distinction between the two to have a greater understanding of what's going on. If someone's only giving you anecdotal evidence for everything that they're saying, chances are they aren't properly examining it. And if they're not properly examining it, then they're not going to get any worth from it. That's the unfortunate truth of things. Yeah, it's going to spiral and spiral and spiral, and there's going to be this big ball of blazing emotion, or this big ball of blazing kind of creative fury as people push their way through those thoughts and ideas and whatever else. What it comes down to is, though, it's still not going to be able to pass you stood in the bedrock, on the bedrock. It's going to come and wash around you. It's just going to part the lava, and you're just going to be fine. And you'll be able to appreciate what it is as it comes towards you, and what happens to it as it breaks down around you. Simple, easy. But anyway, tell me, what do you guys think? Are we as infallible as that study from Borchardt suggests? Are we so infallible that we need to really use other means to lock ourselves down, as I'm suggesting, in the reality of our situation, the reality of the universe? Should we do more to examine that? Tell me what you think. Anyway, if you found this interesting or like this video, then please drop me a like, a little thumbs up. Otherwise, please subscribe for more, and I will see you in the video tomorrow. Otherwise, have a good day and take care, guys.